dear students. Today we will talk about John Keats from 1795 till 1821. John Keats, English Romantic poet, was born on October 31, 1795 in London. The oldest of four children, he lost both his parents at a young age. His father, a livery stable keeper, died when Keats was 8. His mother died on tuberculosis 6 years later. After his mother's death, Keats' maternal grandmother pointed two London merchants, Richard Abbey and John Rowlands, as guardians. What about his education? Abbey, prosperous tea broker, assumes the bulk of this responsibility, while Sandal plays only a minor role. When Keats was 15, Abbey withdrew him from clerk school and forced to apprentice with apothecary, surgeons, and study medicine in London Hospital. In 1860, Keats became a licensed apothecary, but he never practiced his profession, deciding instead to write poetry. Light Hands and First Poems. This is considered as the first poems of John Keats. Around this time, Keats met Leigh Hunt, an influential. Leigh Hunt he's an influential editor. It's not his poems, but an editor of his first poem, Examiner, who published his sonnets on first looking into Champion's Homer and Solitude. First poems. Leigh Hunt also introduced Keats to a circle of literary men, including the poets Percy Bysshe Shelley and William Wordsworth. The group's influence enabled Keats to see his first volume, Poems by John Keats, published in 1870. Endymion. Shelley, who was fond of Keats, had advised him to develop a more substantial body of work before publishing it. Keats, who was not as fond of Shelley, did not follow his advice. He did not take his advice. Endymion, a 4,000-line erotic allegorical romance based on Greek myth. He depended his work on a Greek myth of the same name, appeared the following year. Okay, I mentioned to this Leigh Hunt. Critical attacks. Two of the most influential critical magazines of the time, the Quarterly Review and Blackwood's magazine, attacked the collection, calling the romantic verse of Hunt's literary circle the Cockney schools of poetry. Blackwood declared Endymion to be nonsense and recommended that Keats give up poetry. Shelley's support. Shelley, who previously disliked Endymion's but recognized Keats as a genius, wrote more favorable review, but it was never published. Shelley also exaggerated the effects that criticism had on Keats, attributing his declining health over the following years to spirits broken by the negative reviews. Love and Hyperion. Keats spends the summer of 1818 on walking tour in the northern England and Scotland, returning home to care for his brother Tom, who suffered from tuberculosis, the same disease with his mother. While nursing his brother, Keats met and fell in love with a woman named Fanny Brown, writing some of his finest poetry between 1818 and 1819. Keats mainly worked on Hyperion, a Miltonic blank verse epics of the Greek creation. The fall of Hyperion. He stopped writing Hyperion. Why? Upon the death of his brother. His death of brother prevented him to complete his writing. After completing only small portions, but in late of 1819, he returned to the piece and rewrote it, The Fall of Hyperion, unpublished till 1856. That same autumn, Keats contracted tuberculosis. He and his brother and his mother infected with the same disease, and by the following February, he felt that death was already upon him, referring to the present as his posthumous existence. Third volume of poetry. In July 1820, he published his third and best volume of poetry, Lamia, Isabel, The Eve of St. Agnes, and other poems. The three title poems dealing with mythical. Also here he focused, as I say, most of his literary works with the Greek myth and legendary themes of ancient, medieval, and Renaissance. Also here, Renaissance times are rich in imagery and phrasing. The third volume of poetry, the volume also contains the unfinished Hyperion and the three poems considered among the finest in English language: Ode on Grecian Urn, Ode on Melancholy, and Ode on Nightingale. The book received enthusiastic praise from Hans Shelley, Charles Lamb, and others. And in August, Francis Jeffrey, influential editor of the Edinburgh Review, wrote a review praising both the new book and Endymion. His illness. The fragment Hyperion was considered by Keats' contemporaries to be his greatest achievements, but by that time he had reached an advanced stage of his disease and was too ill to be encouraged. He contained correspondence with Fanny Brown, and when he could no longer be to write to her directly, her mother, but his failing health and his literary ambitions prevented their getting married. His death. Under his doctor's order to seek warm climates for the winter, Keats went to Rome with his friend, the painter Joseph Stevern. He died there on February 23, 1821, at the age of 25, and was buried in the Protestant cemetery. Keats' poetry, though he could hardly have expected it during his lifetime since his work was roundly condemned by the conservative commenters of his day. John Keats becomes one of the most revered English poets of the Romantic periods within a few decades of his death. At that time of his death itself, he had only been writing poetry for about 6 years. Keats' poetry. In his work, however, he had taken on the challenge of using a wide variety of poetic forms, from the Miltonic epic to the sonnets of Syrian's romance, infusing them all with his signature striking sensitivity, verbal adeptness, and impeccable lyricism. Some of his contemporaries, notably his editor and friend Leigh Hunt and the famed poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, championed his work, but they were in the minority. Influenced by Hunt's Examiner, Keats sometimes declared himself part of a new school of poetry. This radicalism may have alienated contemporaries. His post-theism or posthumous reputation grew steadily. However, the Cambridge Apostles, a secret society of undergraduates which includes Alfred Tennyson, a later poet laureate of England, was supportive of his work. The first Keats biography was published in 1848, situating Keats in the English poetic canon. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of Painters, an English group of moderately well-known artists, also used his poems for inspiration. Ode on a Grecian Urn in 1819. Look at this picture. This ode is written by John Keats. Let me read some of these lines. Ode on a Grecian Urn, first stanza. Thou still ravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, Sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweety than our rhyme. What leaf fringed legends haunt about the shape of deities or morals, or of both, in Tempe or the dells of Arcady? What men or god are these? What maidens loath? What mad persuades? What struggles to escape? What pips and timberless? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pips, play on, not to the sensual air, but more endeared. Pip to the spirit deities of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave this song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, thou winning, nearing the goal yet. Do not grieve, she cannot fade, thou hast not thy bliss. For ever wilt thou love, and she fair. a happy, happy bough that cannot shed your leaves nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodists onward. So this is some lines about John Keats in his odes on Grecian. And thank you for listening to this lecture and the life of the John Keats. See you in another lecture. Goodbye.